Morning, everybody. I think we can start. It's 10 o'clock. Welcome, everybody. Reminders, please switch your mobile phone to silence. Members of the press attending, remember this meeting virtually. So can I ask those attending virtually to switch off your microphone to avoid any disruption during the meeting. The meeting is being recorded or available in due course on the council's YouTube channel. And specific reminder to councillors to ensure that those attending virtually can hear the proceedings. And for the recording to capture the entire meeting, please ensure you project your voice and speak clearly. Please remember it's a formal meeting and therefore do not refer to councillors or officers by their first names. No fire alarm planned today, so if we hear the fire alarm, please leave the building by your nearest marked fire exit and assemble at the top of the car park. Please be aware that the contents displayed on your iPod or laptop may be seen by others or members of the public attending the meeting. This is legal. Therefore, please close down screens which are displaying confidential information during the public part of the meeting. Have we had the last John starts watching it. Oh no. Apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair. Apologies for absence from Caroline Lever.
Any other apologies?
None that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. Any other apologies? Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Minutes of the last meeting. Any issues with the last meeting minutes? Anybody got any comments? Good. Can someone propose those minutes as the correct record?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favour of accepting those? Thank you very much. Item 3, no items have been brought forward. Ask for declarations of interest in item 4. Any declarations of interest?
I have received one, Chair, regarding item 8, the housing delivery options from Councillor Peter Lever. Purely a non-registrable interest, but he owns an architect's company.
He's also requested that if he does leave the room that we ask him back because we forgot last time. That's up to us. We might not get that bit. Any other declarations of interest? Yeah, to part there's no part B, so we'll move straight on to part A, which is the waste and recycling update. Which is Mark.
Thank you, Chair. This report was just in response to a request from members at the previous meeting for an update on how the waste and recycling service was performing, and successes and the challenges that we're facing in the near future. So hopefully members have had a chance to read this. I think it's a positive report, and I'd ask that it's taken as a positive report. We've made some great strides forward in the last few years in terms of getting back on top of the service after COVID. Customer complaints volumes have come right down, and that coincides with our missed bin numbers coming right down over the last few years, and that's really largely to a lot of the actions that are detailed in the report. So looking at the vehicles, looking at driver recruitment, and the rounds themselves settling down after some remodeling, and then going forward, we've got some challenges coming up in response really to the government reforms through simpler recycling, and the objective really from central government to try and standardise collections across the whole of England, to make it easier for people to have some consistency no matter whether they are in the country. Some of the challenges we're facing, the next one really is to look at soft plastics. That's the only stream that we're not collecting at the moment that will become statutory in 2027. So that's something we have to look at, the methods we're going to use for collecting it, how we're going to get it back up here to Brinsworthy. The new baler can process soft plastics, but obviously we need to just look at unloading it and putting it through that new baler. And then one of the other services that we currently provide, which is trade waste, which isn't statutory. We just need to have a good look at that, see what it's costing us, see what the opportunities are if we wanted to expand and increase profit, but also look at the running costs and the implications for that. Just before I finish and go over to questions, at 4.8 of the report, I've said that it's worth noting that central government's simpler recycling reform has statutory guidance that says there's an expectation that residual waste is collected at least twice a week. At least every fortnight. But my colleague, our graduate, pointed out that has now changed, and government have left it up to local authorities how frequently we pick up residual waste. So that's an error on my part. That information was from last year. So the message is we can, if we wanted to, move towards a less frequent residual waste collection.
Very much, Mark. And can I say thank you for last week as well? We had a meeting, didn't we? And we raised together various points, and I know that there are specific problems you've got in that area. And my big thing is to try and increase our recycling rates, as you know. And whether it's a big change, which, as you rightly said, will cause some issues and problems, or whether it's incremental changes, but we've got to increase that recycling rate. Because although we were the top areas in the country, in Devon, we're in the bottom three, I think. And,
Yeah.
we can do better, and we've got to do better.
Yeah.
But the massive big thanks to you and your team, because when I first got on the council, there were a lot of complaints about particularly the collections, and that has not been resolved, but it's been virtually wiped out, which is fantastic, and we've got to keep going on that. So there are swings and roundabouts, and but thanks for everything. And I'll open it up now. Councillor Ricky now.
Thank you, Chair. I echo your comments on it. It's great to see the recycling going right down to an acceptable level after some hiccups. A couple of things apart from the obvious. Thanks very much, Mr. Kentel. Don't know what to call you. I can't call you. That's my thing. The corporate priorities 818, 12, 813. It'd be great to have a bolt-on extra, please, referring specifically to the environment. The corporate priority of net zero aspirations and the environment.
Yes, I've kind of overlooked the obvious one there, didn't I? So we.
It's nice.
Just if we could add that to the minutes, perhaps that the improvements in recycling have a positive benefit to the environment.
And this might be a bit cheekier insofar as 4.8, and it alludes to what you just said, Chair, at page 13. Simply, would it be possible for me to ask the graduate trainee manager to let us know, or yourself, Mr. Kentel, if you like, the lower hanging fruit, what would be the most appropriate options there? There might be others to achieve better recycling rates, so we could be number one.
So I'll kick off. I mean, after
Can I bring in something else as a suggestion, because I think I might have mentioned this last week. If I did, it's remiss of me, but I do think I don't like setting up loads and loads of working parties, but I think this is one area where we could benefit from a group of members led with yourself or a member of your team to look at all the possibilities. Because I think this is going to be a political decision that we make as a council, whether we're going to go for this in a big way or small way, but we're going to try and increase recycling. But that's what we want to do as a council. And look at the drawbacks and look at the problems, and those are financial considerations. But I think it'd be useful if we could set up a working party to report back to us or to policy
on what the options are that we can then pursue.
Mhm.
And I think the sooner we get that set up, the better. And I think it would be something that it would get cross-party agreement hopefully on, certainly setting up of it. But then it would mean that members would have to turn up and listen and get involved. And then set the ball rolling. Would that be agreeable to you to do? that?
Yes, something that could be proposed today, I think.
Well, we'll come back to that and I'll propose it formally. I can't remember, Councillor Ricky, now, was it you who asked the question? Sorry, I interrupted.
Was the low hanging fruit really?
So I think after we met last week, do you want to answer that?
Chair, I was just going to say, just in relation to that point, Strategy and Resources Committee can also ask Policy Development Committee to look at it.
Yeah.
So Policy Development Committee can look at areas of work that are passed to it by Strategy and Resources. So if you wanted it to report to that committee, it's within the right of this.
Yeah,
committee.
no, absolutely done. But also, you know, I think the working group should be set up and then,
Yeah.
you know, whether.
Yeah. What I mean is the working group, once it's set up, can report directly in policy development.
Yeah.
And instruction from Strategy and Resources.
Yeah, that would be best, really. Hopefully.
That's fine. So yeah, after we've met, there was actually quite a good article in BBC News about recycling rates, because they've had a look at it across the country, and I think that there is now a trend that rates have pretty much stagnated after authorities that have made changes and are up there with higher rates. Everyone seems to have stagnated a little bit recently. I think just looking at the context again, the same report mentioned that the Southwest region has some of the highest recycling rates. I think it is the highest. It certainly was in the South and the Southwest. So and we're above average with our recycling rates. So although we're, I think, second or third bottom in Devon, we are still above average in the country and in the top third, I believe it is, for recycling rates. But that you know, we shouldn't be complacent, and what we do want to do is, you know, keep an eye on things so that we're not falling and that we are improving. It will be really interesting to see what collection of soft plastics does to our recycling rates, because I know, and just talking to lots and lots of people, since supermarkets have started collecting soft plastics, I noticed that my own black bin at home is much less full than it used. So I think that in itself should have a really positive impact. And that's a biggie for us to suddenly have to start collecting a new stream. That's something we've got to do. And I was hoping that Paul Burton, our Western Recycling Manager, would join us today, but I think he's been delayed. We need to crack on with that now, not wait till 2027, but we need to start moving towards that. So we need to do some work on that and see what that looks like in terms of cost, whether we can collect with our current vehicles, whether we need another container or bag for the public to put soft plastics into. But that in itself, I think, will see a positive impact. We also know from KIT studies and talking to other authorities that are leading the way. Certainly, East Devon are one of the most successful Devon authorities, and they're on 3 weekly residual collections. So there does seem to be a correlation between less frequent residual collections, which almost forces people to recycle more efficiently because their bin is being collected less often. KIT's research says that if you're going to do that, it is really important that you've got the right infrastructure in place. So we used to have a team when we first moved over to collecting the different recycling streams. There used to be 5 full-time recycling advisors that would actually go into communities and help them with their recycling and encourage more recycling. We don't have any at the moment, so that's a resource that we could really do with, I think. But it, you know, it's extra cost. So and then of course, I mean, with the other, you know, I know we can't always keep looking at it, but there is local government review coming up as well. So I think it's important to have a look at what other Devon authorities are doing and see don't make big changes now if you're going to have to change again.
Yeah, no, a couple more people want to come in. Councillor Maskell, Councillor Holmes. Councillor Maskell.
Thank you. Couple of questions. Soft plastics. I think it's great. I mean, I've used. My dogs have big sacks of food, and when that's empty, I use that to fill with soft plastic. But if you're going to be putting that on the curbside, I think we need to think about what type of container we have that doesn't allow it to blow out, because I could see the countryside getting covered in soft plastics. So maybe a sealable container for things like that. Visitors, I find visitors to my home from elsewhere, friends and family come and they're always really impressed with our recycling and the extent of stuff that we can recycle, and so that especially like the food waste and stuff like that. So I think that's a real positive. Also, can I ask, holiday homes? Obviously, we have got an awful lot of holiday homes. Where I live, I do notice that a lot of the holiday homes don't put recycling out, and obviously a lot of their stuff is going into the black bins, which I know are collected separately, but that's obviously quite a big impact on our recycling rates. What's your view on that?
My view on it.
Sorry, not your views on it. Sorry. How do we encourage holiday homes to get involved in it and recycling, and ensure that their holiday makers, their guests, do actually recycle?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the actual setup of those businesses, but the majority of them would be obliged to have a trade waste collection. If they're not, and they're just putting business waste into the domestic, then that actually is an offence, and we can enforce against that. That said, it's extremely difficult sometimes when there's a lot of work to find out whether or not they are actually a commercial business or a domestic setup with just an extra room on the house or something. So it's that in itself is a bit of work that needs doing. And there's a different approaches around the county and around the country as to how hard you go in on those businesses. But if we, quite often we've had people complaining about the collections, and then when we've actually investigated, we've spoken to our colleagues in finance that deal with the rates. We're then able to write back to them and say you should actually have a trade waste collection. We can offer that service, or get someone else in. But ironically, they complain about the service, and then we point out that they're operating legally.
There are some councillors want to come in, but John, do you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to come back on a couple of those points, really. Obviously, from again, it comes down to education. I think it's that clear education of, like you say, holiday lets. And obviously, we've got the recycling advisors that we had previously, then that spreads the message and hopefully increases the volume of material that then is recyclable. That obviously does come as a cost, as we've alluded to, but we need to model that in terms of the wider business case, because obviously if there's additional volume, additional material, that generates additional income for the council, which again goes towards covering the cost of recycling advisors and additional infrastructure that would need to be implemented. I think Mark and the team have done a fantastic job to get the infrastructure and the building sorted now, so that we're in a really strong position to move forward to take more material on. Previously, we weren't in that position, so we are in a strong position now in terms of our base. Now the key thing is how we can build on that, and the additional investment will be funded from the additional income that we'll be able to generate from the sale of the recyclable material and recycling credits that we receive.
Councillor, you want to say something?
Yeah, sorry, I was going to, it's a long time coming, but I'd be really happy when the soft plastics come into play, because obviously I do get asked that quite a lot, when we come down. Even my own husband nags me about it. But we've actually got something definitely similar to the green bin, the big green bin, which is what we put our soft plastics in, full tie, take to Tesco's. But I was going to say, but John's alluded to it already, is the education thing. And I think me and David have said about coming out on a round, because we want to see for ourselves firsthand how where the recycling's not being done. And I think it'll be quite evident as well by the amount of black bags people are putting out, because I know ours is reduced from 2 bins to 1, well, even a 3/4 now, because we do all the recycling all the time. So it is, like John said, it's education really. And I think perhaps then going forward, perhaps we need to be looking at the way we are educating people, what we're giving out, the information we're giving out, and not just saying what we want, what needs to be recycled, but the consequences if you're not recycling. And I think we need to be hitting them harder now with, I think the information that's gone out sometimes has been a bit too softly. It's telling us what we can recycle, but it's not saying the consequences if you're not recycling. And I think we need to be, like some authorities, start being a bit more harder on that, and then we might see a better increase in recycling.
Yeah.
Just to come in slightly further on Councillor Knight's point around low hanging fruit, as it were. So what's kind of just coming up is education is definitely a key. I think there would be space to review our campaigning opportunities. So we're looking a little bit into whether we can use our trucks to advertise and try and promote messages a bit clearer. Possibly kind of reviewing what's on the website with a similar aim of how can we make it more obvious what's going on and consequences. The second thing I would say would be recycling advisors, as Mark's brought up, because they, every single council I spoke to who were all ones with kind of quite aspirational recycling rates, they all were absolutely adamant that having that additional resource in staff was indispensable to how they achieved the rate that they had. So, and there's lots of different approaches to what the workload would be for that recycling advisor, but examples would be doing things like school and educational visits, or attending kind of parish meetings and getting the word spread out that way. Or it could be looking at things like whether you go down an enforcement type route or an advisory type route and actually going out to the people who are struggling with fitting their waste in their bins. So that's quite a key element as well. Or there's things like looking at shared housing areas. So where people are living in flats and they have shared recycling points. Dorset Council is a good example where they've got a team of people who go out and assess that situation. They talk to the residents. They make sure that even if you're if you're living in a flat or somewhere where it's not quite as easy or there's not the storage, just making sure that people have the resources they need and how to do it. So there's loads of different streams that would be very useful with the resource of someone like a recycling advisor. And then thirdly, it is touched on in the report, but side waste is something that we could definitely be more hot on as a council. And it's not as big a change as the kind of further long-term things about looking at a full system redesign of different collection patterns, but it would still take quite a lot of effort and resource to do. It would need to be supported by things like training for customer services. It would need people in an advisory role to pick up on the people who are struggling with it, make sure that it's not impacting the rounds negatively and things like that. So it would need resource, definitely, but side waste is something that, again, every single council I spoke to and every council who is top of the ranks, absolutely none of them are accepting side waste. So even though technically it's not something that we, we're not really supposed to accept it. It's not statutory that we do.
Quite lenient.
But it's tightening up on things like that. Yeah, so tightening up on areas like that could make quite a big impact as well, and it kind of would work in a really similar way to changing our collections, because it's still reducing the capacity that we're going to take, so it still forces people to look to their recycling as an alternative.
Thank you, Kieran. And can I say a personal thank you to you, because you partly helped kick the ball going here, because you addressed Councillor Vicky Knight's committee and you put together that excellent report, and you speak so eloquently on the subject. You're obviously motivated by it. Thank you for doing that. As far as the actual advisors of concern. We've got to all remember as well, we've got 40 odd council members, and we should be our own advocates for this as well. And I'm becoming obsessed with looking at how many people actually recycle their food waste, and it's not that many. And they don't know they can use plastic bags, still don't know they can use plastic bags, any plastic bags to do it. We've got the machinery, we've got the technology now to rip it apart and just keep it. So there are things we can do, but hopefully this is something the working group can meet and push forward and get going. I'm going to, Councillor Milton, did you have?
Thank you very much. No, well, first of all, commend you and your team, Mark, for how far we've got. I think it's quite impressive. So, and as a note as well, evidently things in the rural areas have changed significantly, because I haven't had to contact you for a very long time. So, so long may that continue. Just a couple of things around the thoughts discussion there. Soft plastics, definitely. I think really important to start doing that. I'm a great advocate of education rather than enforcement, because one appears to me to be horrendously expensive and rarely achieves all that you expect. The other actually should start that process that's effective. So that would be the first bit. The second bit is around the sort of the collection of soft plastic. And yeah, really absolutely the same comment as Councillor Maskell here, that if you're going to collect it, make sure you keep it. Because it is pretty evident in the rural areas. I can tell the recycling days. I follow the trail. I pick a black bin bag up pretty well every week from one end of West Anstey to the other that has been collected and is blown out. Now, I absolutely understand the problems of them wanting to shut every hatch as they go from one bit in a rural area to another, but it doesn't give a very good impression of how we are dealing with it at our end. We're collecting it and it's falling out of the lorries on the way. So just remember that bit. It's we need to do our bit and to be seen to be doing it responsibly too. The next one was around the black bins and so on. And I just have a bit of a concern, really. If we can educate people to put less in the black bin, that's fine. I think looking at the numbers of black bins outside some properties really surprises me. I thought most people had one. I drove past one particular property the other day and counted 5. Now there's only one house there, and the other one's only occupied rarely. So where 5 black bins become on our list to collect, I'm not sure. I should think that verges on your trade waste comment, and maybe it's important to look at that. But let's just make it plain that, you know, a reasonable amount. I'm just a bit concerned if we head too fast towards a 3-weekly collection. Are we going to end up with more stuff abandoned everywhere? Because within all of this, I didn't see anything within the report around fly tipping. Now, there's a heck of a lot more fly tipping happens in East Devon than there is here. I don't want the level of fly tipping here that they have in East Devon. So it may not go in one way, but it may be necessary to collect it another, which is significantly more expensive. So it's just those concerns to make sure that they're addressed, especially in a rural context.
Yeah, it'd be good actually. I think on the fly tipping, I think, you know, no issues with anything else you said, but Kit had some very interesting conversations with other authorities about fly tipping. So far away.
Yeah, happy to. And also on the previous point around the soft plastic collections from both yourself and Councillor Maskell, there are a few councils who have already run trials on soft plastic that I've already been in some contact with, but there could be certainly further conversations around the methods that they've used and what they found works for that collection, because yeah, it's obviously a bit trickier than other recycling products, but yeah, some people are slightly ahead of the curve on that one, so probably much to learn from them. Yeah, fly tipping was something that in my meetings with all of those councils I brought forward as a direct question. So have you, is there any evidence or have you experienced any increase in fly tipping, having either in some of their cases reduced their collection frequency, or in some cases reduced their bin size? So did either of those changes result in an increase in fly tipping? And again, not one of the councils reported that was something that they found. So it is a a difficult thing to measure on lots of counts. But I was highly encouraged, certainly by everyone I spoke to, that generally fly tipping and household waste are slightly separate issues. Things that are typically fly tipped aren't generally the things that would fit in one's waste bin anyway. So we're thinking, you know, white goods, mattresses, building materials, things like that generally aren't eligible for your normal waste anyway. So that's one thing. But similarly, generally it's rare that it's your typical household resident that's going out and leaving a large sack of their normal waste out and about. So from the research that I did, it wasn't something that was off-putting. It wasn't something that was a large concern for anyone who'd made those changes. Again, there could be, I'm sure, more data to gather around it. But I certainly didn't find it was, from any of them, something that had been a large challenge following any of those major changes, if that helps.
I'd like to come back in a minute, but-
Just on
No,
that,
sorry,
I'd urge you within
I
that,
think Ken wanted to say something briefly, now let you come back.
That's fine. I can come in after.
All right.
no, it was only to urge to look at the figures around that sort of fly tipping stuff. It would be worth talking to the Country Land Business Association and the NFU. They've got really extensive figures collected because, of course, when fly tipping occurs in the countryside, 90% of the time it's tipped on private land. Somebody opens a field gate. The rather frustrating bit is that when that happens, it becomes the responsibility of the person whose land that is. So it doesn't appear in any council's figures. It's not shown. It's just somebody gets a dirty great bill to clear it up. And what we don't want to do is encourage people to drive past the odd gate here and there and chuck their bin bag over the gate, because that's an easier way of getting rid of it because their bin happens to be full. So let's encourage them to get it right. But can you please look at those figures outside of our own collection figures? Thanks.
Yes, I'll leave you and then we can.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, you know, first of all, I echo what everyone said, and thanks so much for all the work that you've done on reducing the number of complaints about miscollections and on moving things forward in terms of increasing our recycling rates. And I think Councillor Clayton's idea of a working group reporting back to policy development on this issue is a really good one. And that we ought to be looking at this holistically in terms of education and enforcement and possible changes all in one. What I would ask is to bear in mind that there's not a large but an important group of people who rely on regular bin collections because of special medical needs that they have, and can we make sure that we don't forget about the impact of any sort of change in rounds on those people in particular. And sorry, just one more thing, it's a tiny little thing. I was just wondering how the net scheme is going for giving away nets to people to put over the top of recycling bins. I know in our ward quite a lot of people have asked about them, and I've got them round to them, but I don't know how that's rolling out elsewhere. What sort of success has been on that?
Yeah, on the net specifically, I'd need to have a conversation with the team and see how many have gone out. It was very popular when we first made the law, and we've still got supply up here. So, but what the uptake's been, I don't know, to be honest. But for those who don't know, it's a net that goes over the top of the recycling boxes to stop it blowing away.
That would be useful to know. Could you circulate to all members what the position is on that?
Yeah.
Because I think one of the things that's been rightly said about it's not just in rural areas, Kensington, Milton, it's also in the urban bits as well, where you can tell when there's been a collection day because it is all over. Netting would be one small step to help prevent that. But I don't know whether they're aware, members, of how they can get some in their own area.
It's I mean it is interesting. I mean, I know Paul Burton and Suzanne Norris, our waste recycling manager and assistant manager, went up to Somerset recently. The Somerset were there was an authority there that were collecting soft plastics, and they were really amazed at the sheer volume of the stuff. And you know, without being too alarmist, we don't have the biggest site here, so you know it's great news for recycling rates, but there could be a huge volume of material that is brought back up to Brinsworthy, because residual waste currently, it doesn't come here, it goes next door. So so when I say we just need to plan and resource and look at what the impact of that specific item is going to be, it could be quite big, because we might need extra stillages up here, and that will probably result in capital investment. So managing, I think the message here is that whatever we do, we've got to be really on our game and make sure that we can cope with the material and the efficient. I think where we've got to at the moment with the rounds being pretty efficient compared to where we were maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we need to make sure that continues, and that we're providing a really good service for the public. We are picking things up when we say we're going to, and then so we're in control of it and we're doing a good job. And then I think the public are going to be more on board, as many of you have said, that education, they'll buy into what we're doing, rather than if the wheels come off the rounds, people are going to want to just criticise us and probably not recycle, unfortunately. So it's very
Yeah, I mean, definitely echo what Mark has just mentioned, which is that, again, a lot of the councils spoken to were very clear on the fact that unless they were providing a really good service, they wouldn't have had resident support. So it is really important, as Mark said, that we are in a position to know that we are consistently delivering the service we want to deliver before we shake things up massively. But to Councillor Lever's point previously around people with additional needs that might require further or more capacity for waste, I would like to encourage again that, I mean, where we stand currently, we collect fortnightly, but we have exceptions to that currently for people in flats, for instance, who can't meet that. So there's no reason to believe that we won't obviously continue to make mitigations where necessary. And again, every council spoken to, they have there's various means of doing it, but they might calculate based on family size. And if you're a family of 5 or more or 6 or more, you'd have additional allowance of capacity. Or if, as you said, you've got medical needs. The general message, though, was that the most successful way of monitoring that was, again, using those recycling advisors. So in advance of launching some form of scheme, or even at a sideways point, to say, we're introducing this, we're going to be a bit tighter. If you're worried that you won't be able to fit your waste in, get in touch. And at that point, a recycling advisor can offer all the advice needed, would be able to assess whether that need is legitimate and whether actually they are doing all they can to recycle, and actually they still do just need capacity. So generally that is always in every scheme that has been successful, those mitigations are absolutely built in.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Hopefully, if we do manage to pass a motion, the recommendation that we set forward, you might be able to attend at least the first one, subsequent one if possible. Any other comments on the advance report? Councillor Wilkinson.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to pick up a little while back now the points that were being made by Councillor Maskell. The abuse of the system within the holiday areas, and it does concern me. And the abuse, I have to say, is in the main by the owners of the property, not by the holiday makers. Because I doubt whether they're actually paying council tax, and if they are, as Councillor Milton said, they tend to have more than one bin outside. But if they're not paying council tax, why are we paying for picking up the rubbish? It should be trade waste. Absolutely right, Mark. There's no question about that. And it's not just the black bin collection, and it's not just the weekly recycling bins, the street bins as well that we have to pick up are all too often filled with stuff in here, we're going home now. And or even the cleaners or caretakers of the properties putting the black bins beside the street bins and leaving them, and we have to pick up and so I think we as a council are missing a trick on not picking up they that don't register for council tax that put out, and it's not just with the recycling or the waste collection, it's all other manner of facilities that we as a council pay for. And I know we're doubling the council tax on holiday homes, but it's still doubt as to whether we're going to be able to benefit very much from that ourselves by the, by the way it's devolved. So it's just really reinforcing this area. There's far too many collections being taken from holiday homes.
Ken?
Thanks, Chad. Yeah, just in relation to the holiday home point, and it comes back to what Councillor Maskell was saying as well. A couple of years ago, probably longer than that, a few years ago, we did some work with Plastic Free North Devon. I know they've changed their name now, haven't they, to I think. But we did some work with them around some materials that would be put into each holiday home across North Devon. So it might be worthwhile touching base with them again to see whether any further work is taking place. I think they do something still around sustainable businesses and how you run holiday lets. So that might be worthwhile checking out. And I think it would be worthwhile the working group also considering the role of partners like Plastic Free North Devon in that educational piece, because we have parish councils, we have the partnerships that we all go to in different towns, and I'm sure they can have an impact as well. But just in relation to the working group, Mark's report obviously covers a whole host of different things around the workings of the waste and recycling team and the work that's ongoing. I'm presuming that the working group be set up specifically to look at increasing the recycling rates.
Yeah, that's how I understood.
Yeah. Okay.
Can we move? Sorry, is there any other comments on that? Because the recommendation is to note this report, but can I add to note it and specifically to set up a working group? I'm going to pick my neck out here. I don't think it needs to be party political. I think this is something that would be best served by having people who are genuinely interested in pursuing the objective of increasing North Devon's recycling rate. And I don't think that has to be a party political thing. I think it could be anybody who's interested member wise to just sit on this. So I think, can we do that? Does it have to be? It doesn't have to be party political divide.
No, certainly not. But you might want to specify where the working group is to report into. Is it to report into here or
back to policy committee? So the recommendation is to note the report and to set up a working party to look into improving the recycling rates of North Devon, and any member who is interested to join.
So you want to set a maximum number though, Chair? Because if we write out to everybody and say who wants to join and we end up with 43 councillors, that's not much.
I think probably a working group should be no more than 10, but so we'll say the first 10.
Yeah. It's fine.
And if there's 42, then yeah, we'll have to look at it again. But I think there should be. I bet there's 10 people who'll be interested in this.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm just saying, Chair, as lead member, I want to be on it as well.
Okay, can we get on to move the recommendation?
Yeah.
I've added to it. Don't know who we are constitutes on that, Councillor Bell. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Yeah, and thank you, Mark, and for Kate as well. That's excellent. I think it was a good discussion. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. Nina, don't know how we do. Nina and Graham, both presenting.
Councillor Bell's going to start with that. Thank you.
Housing strategy.
Thank you very much. Okay. After done a lot of work, obviously, on the introducing the new housing strategy for 2025, sets out a fairly pragmatic, compassionate response to the housing crisis that we've previously declared in North Devon, as well as many of the parishes. Our new government's made housing a central priority. We've got a new planning targets and a big push apparently for delivery. So we've got a much larger pressure on rural and coastal areas. Affordability and supply are already at breaking point. This strategy cements North Devon Council's position as a proactive player in the fight to ensure that one day North Devon residents have a safe, secure home, and aligns with the 2024 Housing Commission findings and positions us to respond to challenges in planning, infrastructure funding and local house in a much more turn.
Okay, so yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. Is that okay, Chair?
Yeah.
Thank you. So Councillor Bell was just referencing the Devon Housing Commission report, which was many people, many of the authorities in Devon were party to, and very much the strategy has been based around those recommendations that have come out from that report. Do you want to pause? Is it okay if I continue?
I'll manage afterwards.
Yeah, that's fine.
We want some silent break. Put it back there. Councillor Hunt. Well, we'll restart it. That's all right. Councillor back indeed. No problem. Nina, do you want to carry on? Yeah.
Okay, that's lovely. So yeah, as I was saying, we very much based the strategy around those workings from the Devon Housing Commission report, where many local authorities were involved in that. We had a full member workshop, full engagement with our members, and they came up with 3 key themes, which were prevent homelessness, provide new housing supply, and make homes healthy. We then had an obligation to go and engage with our communities and our strategic partners, which we did over a 6 The consultation response generated 124 responses, and those responses were really positive in line with those themes. They came back and they were certainly endorsing those clear actions that we put into the strategy. I think the strategy was quite robust in terms of, rather than having aims, it had some specific targets and actions that it wished to come through. Some of those were around, do we believe that the council should purchase additional accommodation? And 84.7% people said yes to that. Do we feel we should continue to support the government asylum programme as long as there was financial support? Again, 63%. Do we believe we should continue to support our rough sleepers and have pods or a similar type of housing? And again, 83% agreed with that. And probably the fundamental statistic which links to an agenda item that we've got further on the agenda is, do you support the council purchasing additional housing to then be able to offer this on Devon Home Choice, which will tip us into the arena of being a local authority registered provider of social housing, and 85.4% agreed with that. So it's good to note that statistic when we look at the housing options report later on in the agenda. So no doubt you will have read the strategy and read the recommendations. What they're asking for is that, based on the feedback and the consultation responses, that the housing strategy is approved and that delegated authority is given to myself to make any non-material amendments to that strategy and publish that on the website. That members use the approved housing strategy to aid future decision making on business cases and reports that align to those 3 main themes. And I think that's the fundamental reason of having this wider housing strategy, is that when those business cases come forward, that you've already made the big decisions in the strategic element, and then you will look at those business cases on merit to determine whether they stack up from a social, financial or community element. And the final reason, recommendation, is just to consider the outcomes of the equality impact assessment. So there's many of us in the room who've been involved in the strategy. If there's any questions around the content, then between us, I'm sure we'll be able to answer those.
Okay, thank you very much, Nina. The big thing about this is it's a call for action, and the action comes in the next agenda item, which is very important. So let's bear that in mind if we open this now for debate. But I think the actual report is substantial, very good. So now thanks to the team. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, Nina, for doing that. That's been wonderful. The one thing I think I would add is when we first read the Devon Housing Commission report from last year, Councillor Crabb made the very, very true point that it was a lot of ideas, but not actually a real push to do something. You know, there was a lot of facts, a lot of information, and a lot of sort of you should. This actually really says we will. So I think that's kind of the strength of it is that, you know, we can now go forwards when we have to make decisions. We can really drive them a lot more quickly, which will help people who need housing in North Devon. I think it's a really good thing for people that really struggle in those areas.
Okay, Councillor Bell. Councillor Ricky now?
Yeah. Well, we all lived with this for quite some time, and no one could have tried harder than Councillor Bell and other councillors to push this out to the parishes, to the public. I still find that just over 7% response from councillors was pretty pathetic. I'm sure 43 of us would say, well, we already agreed with it. But was that generally a disappointing response? Because well, it took about half an hour to fill it out, I suppose, with responses, but that's a pretty small feedback considering how much effort went into it and how significant and important the actions are going to be. Are we satisfied? It's a bit direct, isn't it? Are we satisfied?
No, Nina was very disappointed, weren't you, Nina?
Oh well, I didn't know that.
Disappointed.
I certainly was when I saw those statistics, damn statistics.
I suppose if I'm being perfectly honest and candid, I did expect a little bit more from the wider general public, because everybody is talking about housing and housing being a crisis. But having spoken to the team who are responsible for engagement and communication and using the new software, they said actually they were really quite pleased with the response. It's difficult to get people engaged in strategy topics. It's probably not the most exciting element. So I hear what you're saying. I mean, and there's only so much we can do. I mean, we did so much. Councillor Bell was on The Voice. We did many promotions. We certainly promoted it within our community hubs in Ilfracombe, South Molton, and through our centres. There were paper copies out there. I don't know what more we could have done, to be honest.
That's not what I meant, sorry.
No.
Councillor Powers, you want to?
Yeah, Jim, I highlighted each and every one of my parishes. But the underlying theme through this is that the district council will intervene more. And the response I was getting is, yes, get on with it, just do it. Yeah. So I think, don't be disappointed. The general out there is support for us doing, and more directly, and for support for community-led housing and all the other interventions that we're talking about in this report. So I'm not pessimistic about this. I think we've got the community behind us completely. And it's actually an endorsement of us being a bit braver than perhaps we have been over the last few years. So, I think it gives us a bit of confidence to move forward.
Yeah. Councillor Wilkinson, I'll come back to you, Councillor.
Thank you. Mine's a plea as well, really, that loads of really good stuff in here, massive need to work on. But a plea for the rural communities as well. Let's not just make our concentrated efforts on the major settlements of, Barnstable, South Molton, Ilfracombe, etc. Also look at the importance of the housing strategy for the smaller communities that need protection every bit as much.
Actually, Councillor Wilkinson's just sort of headed off in the same direction as I was. Couple of things first, though. I think disappointment or whatever, generally speaking, there's a barrage of consultations people get, and it's those people, only the people that respond are those people that are either interested or involved with something at the moment. So I personally wouldn't be disappointed in a poor response. Generally, you get a really massive response if people object to most of what you've got in front of them. And they didn't do that. So that to me is a sort of obtuse endorsement of direction. I was just going to repeat the route here. Please don't forget the rural communities. And in some ways, the report that's there in front of us is kind of been outdated by political events recently. We're likely to see considerably different pressures in rural communities now, particularly among rural workers, with the changes in taxation and so on that are there. We're going to see increased fragmentation on a generational basis around rural businesses, farms and so on. Those people are not going to find housing attached to where they work in the same way. And the challenges are going to be how we keep that rural community still working in the countryside under a very different scenario, where on a generational basis they're likely to have to find 20% of their 20 to 40% of their business in order to fund taxation and substantively see chunks of businesses sold off. I think those challenges are likely to be increased, and we've got to be aware to them in rural communities. In some ways, those are the ones that, coming back to me occasionally, and feeling a little left out on some of the consultation.
Councillor Milton.
If we can just allow Miss Jones to come in and respond to that, because I think you attended a seminar on Friday, didn't you?
Yeah, so well, it relates to just generally with the housing strategy and meeting the needs of rural communities. Part of the housing strategy was around community land trusts, and that's the beauty of them in that the majority of our CLTs are rural. So that's a way of rural communities helping to meet their own needs. And then aside from that, in the next item around perhaps becoming an RP, one of our reasoning for that is when RPs may not be attracted so much to smaller rural sites, this is where the council could step in and pick up section 106 units to keep those rural communities going. So we certainly have that in mind all the time, these it's not just the urban areas.
Just respond to that a second. Can I just ask, within the strategy there, we ensure that we facilitate some fairly rapid moves in CLTs. I think the principal problem with them is the incredible length of time it's taken to get them together in an awful lot of cases and get them working. Now that we know how they can work and the structures which they can take, assisting that direction through the strategy would be really helpful and speed up the process.
Just really sort of partly answering Councillor Wilkinson's and Councillor Milton's point that what this strategy isn't just about building new homes, but it's about intervening in the private rented sector and making homes healthy. And one of the big issues in rural areas is, when people are not on mains gas, that there's incredible fuel poverty and quite a lot of energy inefficiency in private rented sector houses. And this strategy gives us the opportunity to intervene in those sort of situations.
Councillor Goldie, do you want to? Does anybody, any other member want to say anything on this? Councillor Goldie, do you want to? Councillor Patrice.
Yeah, I was just about excellent strategy, but I can understand people not responding to it, and it's not me, it's not me. I'm sure we'll get far more response as soon as a place is pointed out and some activity is observing to be happening there. That's when people get interested, and that's when people start responding.
Yeah.
Yes, just with regards to the rural point, they are excellent, and we do. That was as the Housing Commission report said, many of the districts in Devon have some of the worst possible housing across the country, and it is because of the rural isolation. So we are working to. I think we probably need to work even harder to promote the things that are on offer, and then we need to bring up the standard of that housing as well as expanding it out, because we do. As I learned, working in A&E yesterday, there are some desperately poor quality housing around the area, and it affects people's health massively. If we can bring up the quality of this housing, that's fantastic, and that's the third part of the strategy. And I think that's one of the very big pushes that we have to. We do also have to work with increase the CLTs, and the speed of the CLTs is frustrating from time to time, but it is a very complicated situation. I did want to just initially answer to what Councillor Ricky Knight mentioned about it is 124. It's always nice if it's a high number, but it's like the complexity of the questions was quite high, but they needed to be complicated. They needed to be, what I get from the housing crisis group is that there is massive support for what we're doing and for this housing strategy, but of course it does take quite a long time to fill in that, and it is difficult, but I think it needed to be that complicated. I was speaking with the Pickwell Foundation about their very long response. That took almost a day and a half, I think, for them to put everything together they wanted to say. So the responses we've got are excellent, and I think they are indicative of the direction of what people in North Devon want to see.
Jamie, do you want to come back?
I was only going to say, although it feels like PLTs take a long time, when you're in Housing Amazing, you see it from when pre-apps was first raised to when they're on site and let out. And actually, there's not that much difference. 6-7 years is nothing for a development. And so the CLTs are actually doing really well. We've also stand out quite well in Devon, bringing the focus back to locally rural areas with the 810,000 that was allocated from the CCO funding specifically to move our CLTs forward. And I think we were one of the only councils to move the programme forward within Devon and the 20 programmes that were funded.
Yeah, just to add, Chair, so the council applied for county combined authority funding. We had funding for Ilfracombe Healthy Homes, just under £2 million and 810,000 for the CLT schemes. And as James said, I think we were one of the only authorities that actually managed to secure the funding and actually show deliverability of spend by the 31st of March. So in a sense, that enabled us to passport the money and get the Woolwich and Paragon schemes progressed further and free up 810,000 to then progress the next branch of CLT schemes to come forwards. So it shows this council can deliver, and also we've got that money to move those schemes forwards in the new financial year.
Okay, thank you.
Just it is compared with other developments. So we've got developments going up in Braunton now that have been battered around since the early 2000s. The CLCs have been going for a couple of years, and they are, especially when you look at Ilfracombe and Woolwich, they're making great strides. But they are delivering real value when they're finally completed. But they are.
Can we move forward? Could we move the recommendations? All those in favour of the recommendations? Thank you, Dina, Jamie, Graham, for the team. Great report. Thank you very much. I think Councillor Maskell, do you want to? You leave it.
I'll be back in a minute.
Team as well for all the work they did to
communication too. Okay, item 8. We'll up to the action now. Nina's issue.
Thank you, Chair. So this second report is intrinsically linked to the housing strategy that you've just approved, and very much focuses on the 3 themes which we've already highlighted previously around preventing homelessness, providing new supply and making homes healthy. Back in 2019, we commissioned an external report to look at our options to try and further our holding of housing within the organisation. A lot's changed since 2019. We've had Brexit, we've had COVID, we've had wars, we've had housing crisis, cost of living, you name it. So we felt that it was appropriate to ask those consultants to review that report for us based on the sort of current status. Also considering since that time, quite a lot of councils have set up wholly owned companies. Some of those have gone well, some of those have gone less well. And so we just wanted to understand how that may impact us and how we should be looking at our delivery options. So what we asked them to do is just to look at 2 options. One of those was the council direct delivery, and that's an approach which would be in-house, and it would require an appropriate level of resourcing, governance arrangements, member training, housing development and management policies and procedures. And that would look at holding housing, whatever that might look like, in the general fund. And we'd need to keep those numbers below 199, although government are currently consulting widely on whether we should make those numbers larger, 500 or more, and of which we have responded to say we would like to see it more. The second point was to go back and look at a local authority housing company, of which members originally approved. That was the direction of travel back in 2019. And this report sets out the key challenges and the key benefits of both of those options. They're set out in the main body of the report. And also set out in there is a financial model looking at what it would look like to hold social housing, where we'd have the benefits of drawing down Homes England funding, versus holding market rents, which we can do within our general fund, but those monies do need to be circulated back, and you can't hold those monies in a separate account. Those monies have to circulate through the general fund. So if members were to approve the recommendations in this report, and that we would become a local authority registered provider, that will be the first time that we will be holding social housing since 2000, when we did the large scale voluntary transfer to North Devon Homes. So it's a fundamental change to our business operating model. And it's really important that members understand the implications of doing so. But as we said in the previous item, we've got community support, member support to go in this direction. And as we've noted in the last report, 85.4% of people said they'd like us to be holding social accommodation. So I'll quickly run through the recommendations and then open the floor to questions, because there's quite a lot in that report. But the recommendations are that members note the implications any chosen option may have on the operating model of the council, that members approve the option of council direct delivery of housing, understanding the risks and benefits this model has associated with it. In light of paragraph 2.2 above, members approve the re-registering as a local authority registered provider of social housing with the regulator of social housing, understanding the regulatory burdens imposed by this. That members approve applying to Homes England to become an investment partner. I should be saying the numbers 2.5 for delegated powers for the governance arrangement around becoming a local authority registered provider and owning general needs affordable housing to be agreed between myself, head of PMO Environmental Health and Housing, the lead member for housing and the lead member for regeneration. And 2.6 that consider the outcomes of the equality impact assessment summarised in paragraph 6. Any questions?
Thank you, Nina. Councillor Ricky Knight.
No.
Sorry.
Elon Musk.
Question on it. Any comments and questions?
It seems about time you did this. Everybody still refers to social housing as council housing. I mean, it's about time, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's possible, please.
Can
Sorry.
I just have a quick question about the finances of it all? John. What are the, you talk about the risks and benefits, I understand those. Yeah. What are the financial for the council?
As members know, we've obviously got the Future High Street Fund project, which we've started obviously at Balfour Street, and there's been housing units coming towards the end of this financial year. When members looked at that original business case back in 2021, there were a couple of options members approved for us to go out and borrow the money to deliver the additional units of accommodation and housing, in addition to the £6.5 million that government gave us in terms of government grants towards the wider scheme. The options at that stage were we could build the housing, which were 10 units of accommodation. We could sell those to the open market, in which case we would lose that housing stock and that would go into general open market supply. Or we could retain that housing and look to rent that housing out, whether that be at open market or whether it be at an alternative affordable level. Members' clear steer back in 2021 was they wanted to retain that housing, and that was the approval members gave. The table that's set out on page 201 at the top just shows the original business case and how much additional borrowing was required in relation to the Balfour Street scheme. At that time, obviously, loan costs were relatively preferential. As Nina said, we've gone through a number of things since 2021 that changed the economics, and the loan costs have increased. We didn't take out the borrowing back in 2021 because we only borrowed when we needed to spend the money. And obviously, we had government grant to use first. So based on current loan rates at 5.8%, as you can see in the table, in the second column, those loan costs have increased quite significantly. The rental income in the original business case was based on open market rental, which was around £100,000 for the 10 units. So therefore, at the bottom, there was a net revenue cost of around about 38,000 based on the original business case, That's gone up to around 150,000 based on the new loan costs that have now come in based on current rates. We will look to borrow probably cheaper than that, but this just sets out the two differentials in terms of how we were modelling back in 2021. The benefit of becoming a registered provider is it opens up the opportunity to become an investment partner with Homes England and attracts some capital funding towards the building of those housing units, potentially up to around £120,000 per unit. So at 10 units, potentially we've got the opportunity to attract £1.2 million worth of capital funding towards against that additional borrowing that we would have had to take out. The table, the third and fourth columns just show what the difference would be if we managed to get the £1.2 million. It would reduce our loan costs by £100,000. The level of rental income was about half because we would move from getting market rental income down to becoming social rental income. But the clear benefit then is actually it reduces our net revenue cost. And the big plus is then we're providing social housing and more affordable housing to the North Devon community. So it just shows how that model can change by becoming a registered provider and opening up those opportunities to get that capital investment.
Morally, the right thing to do.
Alongside that, obviously, as I touched on in the last report, we have managed to attract £2 million worth of funding for Healthy Homes in Ilfracombe. And obviously that's opened up our doors to be able to potentially, or we've acquired now some further properties in Ilfracombe, in Oxford Grove, and also the old Royal Mail building. And we're looking to renovate and develop additional housing units in those properties. So again, we'll be looking to go down the route of social housing and providing a revenue stream that will then be reinvested back into further social housing moving forward. So I think we've moved a long way since 2021 in terms of where the council's strategy was going in terms of where we wanted to go with housing. Back then it was around, could we get over market rent and get a bigger return? Now it's about, I think, doing the right thing socially, and also, as you can see from the model, it opens up the opportunity to reduce some of that financial risk by attracting some of the capital grant funding.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Councillor Ricky Knight and Councillor Petrinas.
That was my question.
That's your question, Councillor Petrinas.
I was going to ask, how easy is it for us to attract homes in Route Hamlet?
We're already engaged with Homes England and we've had a conversation with them. And Jamie's working closely with the wider team around applying for that. Once we have the if the recommendations are approved today to go down that route of registered provider, then that opens up our application to become the investment partner. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I mean, it also ticks all the boxes because it meets their priorities of social rent, Ilfracombe into private areas. Who, yeah, they were quite happy with the funding and stuff that we gave. This the market street model.
Presumably there are instances when they say no, it doesn't. I mean, we must have a limited amount of resource, haven't we, it seems to?
They do, but there's also a huge amount of top-up fund this year, and which we can hopefully tap into. Local authorities automatically have that RP status funding, and at a recent meeting, Home England challenged people to actually tell them when they had actually turned down some funds, because as long as we tick all those boxes, they almost guarantee it. So as long as we're not doing anything that doesn't meet their criteria.
Just to add to the chair, it's obviously with the Balport Street properties members know, obviously we had reduced funding when we put in for the grants. Costs have increased quite substantially since 2021, and the team have done a remarkable job to value engineer those costs down as much as they can. One of the biggest decisions could have been around, well, actually, one of the biggest chunks of costs we could have taken out would be to actually just don't do the housing on the upper floor, whereas the council have been brave to continue that strategy and continue to deliver the housing. So that ticks a number of the boxes with Homes England around providing that additionality in the town centre.
We've got to remember, well, while we're in this place, I mean, Tories who introduced the right to buy, and I agreed with it, but they stopped the money from being reinvested at buying and building more social housing, which we're now picking the pieces up a generation 25 years later. It's wrong, and as Councillor Price has said, it was probably the right thing to do. But can you just clarify, someone using words on this, what the situation is with the present situation with right to buy, and what happens now with us? Because I'm sure I'm not the only one we know, but
So the right to buy would still,
It's a look recently, isn't it?
it would still stand. But there are some caveats that we can put around that. Cost floor of the properties is one of those, and we're also speaking with Homes England to see whether there's any tie-in with that in terms of the grant that they provide. And I don't think we've got absolute clarification on that at the moment. But I think, yeah, but there are more constraints. It does still apply. It is still a risk. We've spoken to many other local authorities and they've said actually the numbers that have come through are quite limited. It doesn't stop it altogether, but because of the cost of now providing housing, the affordability to them is less so. Whereas if you were going through the market rent model, that right to buy would still exist in relation to that. And you'd probably find that you get more applications for that through that route than you would through social rent.
We can find out about funding, how long it puts off. So someone can live in social housing for 3 years and then apply under right to acquire or right to buy, depending which tenant they are. But certain amounts of national funding that may delay any right to these right to buys for a later stage. So we're trying to find out that. Also, certain geographical areas are not included in right to buy or right to acquire. So DPA, designated protected areas in rural areas. So certain restrictions to the right to buy and right to acquire.
And all of that will come out. If this is approved today, we'll be setting up a project team within the organisation. You'll then have a project initiation document, so those risks will be articulated further. It'll be really clear what the governance arrangements are around this, what those additional resources are going to be, because there absolutely will be additional resources. If we're adding to our pot, I think we currently own about 25 properties, which are managed exceptionally well with our property team. But if we're scaling up, we are going to need to look at that operating model and understand what that economy of scale is going to look like in terms of the support, the tenancies, the governance, the reporting. So, like I said at the outset of this, it is a fundamental change for the authority, one which I think it seems everybody in the room is fully endorsing, but we've got to also be aware of the implications, financial and resource implications around.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Ricketson.
Quick and Chairman. Yeah. If we become a LARP, this is such a significant decision for SMI to take. I'm just presuming it gets ratified by full council, which is a shoe in the Senate. I just say SNR decision on behalf of the full council. Yeah, it's a big decision.
It is.
Yeah.
I'll move the recommendation, Chairman. No doubt you should go there.
Oh, great.
Just before you do that, I think, Councillor Bell, do you want to?
I'll yield to the Council President. It was only to add, of course, Devon Home Choice figure this will help to impact on those figures. Certainly moving forward, it should, because while people are finding housing under Devon Home Choice, the numbers are fairly stalled at the moment. We need everything we can to help to drive those down. And of course, and in places like Bellport Street and in Ilfracombe, where we, as you know, with our environmental strategy, we are driving these houses. It does mean that we're also driving the environmental issues in housing in North Devon as well, and we're setting a bit of a gold standard to move forward. So happy to.
Yeah, Councillor Petrini, did you? That's yeah.
I was saying that even though this doesn't need this decision, doesn't need to be council, presumably the adoption of a housing strategy does. Is that correct? Yeah. That's the question that I should have asked on the last item.
Strategy isn't going to, it's not part of the policy framework, so that will be approved here, or it was approved here. Yeah. The other thing to bear in mind, members, that this is improving our direction going forward, but as projects come on stream, then you will get other reports coming in which will assess the risks of those particular projects.
Can I ask you, so what's the next step? Because accepting that this is going to be accepted now, the recommendation, what's the next big step?
So applying for the status is fairly simple. If you're a local authority, it's pretty much a tick box exercise. If you hold one property and you're a local authority, you will get approval. So that's fairly easy.
Is this going to be unique?
I'll probably pick
Is there an officer going to be put in charge of this?
Well, that's what we'll tease out when we form the internal project group. The PMO, we've got a date already in the diary that we're going to sit in a darkened room with some post-it notes and go, okay, members have said yes, what on earth are we going to do now? So we're going to start to map what we believe are all those pieces of work that need to be done. And out of that, we'll understand what the skills are that are required. So no, it probably won't be me, but we need to understand who are the right people at the right time to be doing those products. We'll need to be applying to Homes England to be an investment partner. I suspect Jamie and I will look at that. That's a little bit more onerous. There's quite a few boxes and hurdles that we need to jump over to get to that status. But again, internally. So would you like a report coming back to understand what that setup looks like?
And the delays there. When will we hear something next, do you think?
If you approve it in a moment, then I think we've got the meeting very, very quickly to understand what that governance will look like. We've already got a lot of research and a lot of intel from other organisations, and actually a lot of this is set out anyway on gov.uk. There's some very sort of clear rules as to what we've got to do.
Easy then.
It's around,
Yeah.
around the condition of properties, and there's been a whole load of publicity around mold, etc. And one of the risks associated with becoming a registered provider is that you enter into a whole new sphere of regulation effectively. And so one of the big things will be looking at how we pick our way through that, and whether we need outside assistance through a partnership, perhaps with others, to help us with that. But this is a tried and tested route. Other local authorities have gone down this route. Teambridge, for instance, are a registered provider. So there is a systems out there that we can use. But once we've registered as a social landlord or registered provider, you will get further reports. I stress that you will get further reports as projects come forward. So it won't be a case of registering as a social landlord and then suddenly we're the owners of 300 properties, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
There will be control by members.
Would you like to manage expectations on this, perhaps, as well?
Yeah.
Amongst the public.
Yeah, this sets the direction for the council and enables us to go forward. But members will still have control over how we go forward and the extent of our involvement.
Great, exciting times ahead. Councillor Prowse, have you moved the recommendation? Yeah. Somebody seconded it? All those in favour of the recommendations? Thank you very much, and thank you, Nina, and best of luck from this committee.
Thank you. Shall I go and get Councillor Lever back in?
It was a tied vote, and unfortunately it came to my casting vote, Councillor Lever, and I thought, well, better I'd let you.
Yeah, well, better let you know.
You've got a nice one.
Item 9, Sarah Shane, this is the land at George's Road.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think members might recall that early last year we brought a report to members on a small parcel of land that we own at St George's Road, and it's adjacent to land owned by Devon County Council with former station service officers. As members know, DCC have now vacated that property. It's the end of life and they intend to dispose of that asset. And last year we talked about the opportunity for NDC to market our site alongside that disposal. And again, last year, members agreed to do so. DCC are now in a position to market the land. They've drawn up a collaboration agreement between the parties. However, it's necessary for me to bring this back to you because there have been two material changes since we made that decision. Firstly, the site now includes a third parcel of land,
owned by an academy trust, and members can see that in the plan on page 207. And furthermore, the land is public open space, so our parks department have confirmed that they maintain the piece of land in question and that it's available for use by the public. On that basis, before we would be able to market the land as per the original recommendation, we have to advertise the land as such and our intention to dispose, and that's set out in paragraph 4.7 in the report for you. So whilst the collaboration agreement has been drafted between all three parties, and the both Devon County Council and the Academy Trust have confirmed their intent to market immediately, it's really important that we understand whether members want to proceed with that based on the changes that we now know. So the recommendations to members, as set out on page 205, are that that we advertise an intention to dispose in accordance with the Local Government Act, being that it is open space, and that subject to any material objections to the proposal to dispose of land, that members still approve that we market the asset alongside Devon County Council, but noting and approving the addition of the Academy Trust site.
Okay, thank you, Sarah Jane. I know there's a few comments. Councillor Perry.
This is quite a strange situation for me to be in, because Sarah Jane knows I completely disagree with the recommendation. I did last time. And I do it for a number of reasons. And I think I'd like to move not the recommendation, not just the negative to the recommendation, but something a bit more positive, that we try to use this opportunity to pull something together for this community. So, Chair, the problem here is that the county are selling all sorts of land all over the place in bits and pieces, some of it not making huge amounts of money, and most of it having no community benefit at all. There's a new administration now at the County Hall. I would hope that we'd be able to recommend today that they look again at this, because there are buildings on the county land that will mean that the vacant building credit will mean there'll be no affordable housing. So if we support this sale will go ahead without any affordable housing, most likely. And that's the reality of it. We just had an item where we talked about our partnership with Homes England. My view is that we should go to the council and say, be our partners in this, put your land in with ours. And we're obviously the Academy Trust have got to look at different issues, because they've got different obligations, obviously. But I think this parcel of land has got the ability to produce something quite exciting for the community, including some open market housing, but some affordable housing and some sort of community benefit, including sort of like a village green or a hub in the middle of the community. So that would be my recommendation, Chair, that we resolve today not to go ahead with the advertising it for sale, to overcome the open space issue. And that secondly, we approach the county and say, what is the position? Can we talk to you about doing something here together for the good of the community? And talk to the trust as well and say, obviously, you as an academy, as a school, you've got some of the most deprived patches of Barnstable here. You also got a moral responsibility to help make something work for the community. So that's what I'd like to see here is, not do anything in a hurry. Those buildings, because the buildings are still there and not demolished, they sort of pose a threat to the development rather than helping it. So I think we should we just agreed, didn't we? We should be more interventionist. So what I'm proposing, we do exactly this on this bit of land, Chair.
Yeah, Councillor Crowe. Councillor
Lehman. I find myself in agreement with Councillor Prowse on this. I think you're right. We have already said today that we're going to intervene in the housing market more. And I think the change at Devon County Council can't be ignored. The people who are now running the county council campaigned on the basis in large part of supporting the findings of the Devon Housing Commission and of accepting that Devon County Council have a responsibility towards dealing with the housing crisis. And what was talked about was the use of the second homes council tax increase, the majority of which goes to the county. But I mean, there are other ways that they can help as well. And I think, I mean, obviously they're just in administration and things haven't settled out yet. But I do think that we ought to just stay our hand a bit and talk to them about what can be done on this site in terms of placemaking and in terms of helping with affordable housing.
Really exactly what Councillor Ira said. The new chair at Devon County Council, Councillor Brazil, has pretty much said what we're saying here, that we should be using these packages of funds for social gain. Recommend that we defer by at least a month to give the new county council time to reflect on what they want to do now, whether they've got changes they want to make, and what we can do moving forwards.
Any other questions, comments? Councillor, come back. Sarah Jamie.
Only very brief. I just possibly maybe have to think about, is a month going to be enough? Because I don't think it is. They're only just going to have a little reshuffle and no one's going to really know what they're doing. So perhaps a month isn't quite enough, but certainly the conversation needs to happen with council.
Time. Did Councillor Paris is the approach screen?
It's absolutely.
On the issue of discussion, though, Sarah Jane, if we come back to you, were the ward councillors actually asked for comments on this in Bilton, and was the town council asked for comments? And did they get any?
The two things. So first of all, the reason this report coming back to members is because we'd already agreed to dispose, but it was only when I came to enter into the collaboration agreement it became clear that there are these two material changes. So for this particular part, where it's actually about bringing it back to yourselves, that consultation hasn't happened. We can continue to do that. The one thing I think is
obviously the last time this was discussed, that ward council would be consulted.
was the delegation was to myself, yourself, and Councillor Pass to enter into the agreement to dispose.
My responsibility.
That just wasn't, the consultation would have happened prior to the agreement to dispose in February 24.
Councillor President, now formally consulted the ward council and the town council as well.
That's absolutely fine, but I think the point I need to make to members is that the county council and the academy are not dependent on our land to proceed. So I had already made contact with the county council about whether they, would be interested in changing the position. Whilst I am more than happy as an officer to go back and to say, this is the position of North Devon Council, we would like you to revisit. I think this needs to be a political, there needs to be a political intervention.
Who would, on the county council, what is the, who's the portfolio holder? I know you don't know the name, but what's the name of the portfolio?
It will change.
The name will change. I know they're still sorting us out. The actual term, like in charge of education or social services, what will this come under?
It's their estate department that are leading on this, but do you want to?
The portfolios will no doubt change with the new political administration.
Yeah, but what's the portfolio called? We're going to get an education spokesperson on Devon County Council. Who's going to, what's the portfolio title for what this area is covered by?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it will change anyway with the new administration, I imagine. But the point,
it might not change the name, but once we know that the new person, what I'm saying is politically they can be approached by the politicians from North Devon.
Yeah, But the setting up of the portfolios is a function of the new leader effectively.
Yeah.
So when the county council appoint their new leader, they will then appoint their cabinet and their executive.
Yeah.
And that will be
I'm
for the
not
leader
making
and the
myself
executive.
clear, Ken. I get that.
So we can see what the current portfolio holder is, or the current portfolio is, but they won't be in existence now. So there won't be anybody to
So the
approach at
person,
the
the
moment.
person will be for another week, I should imagine. I was just asking, what is the portfolio actually called?
Yes, in the past, it's come directly under the leader.
Leader's done it.
Is it?
In the past, yeah, but whether that will continue or not. What Sarah Jane is saying is that in the past, under the previous administration of the county council, the main thrust of the county council was to get the best bang for their buck, get the most money they can do for their land holding when it's been sold. And that's the experience that we've had with the county council in the past, and that's what's happening with this. So if there is going to be a change of approach, then that political intervention needs to happen straight away, because at the moment, North Group are under instructions to go out and market this. And they're saying to us, do you want to be part of that marketing? If we go back and say no, then their instruction will be no doubt at the moment to continue marketing without us. So whilst we can go back to officers,
Possible to just hold on, tell the officer to hold on.
we can suggest that, but the county politicians should perhaps be raising that back at County Hall as quickly as
Was
possible.
in Kingsbridge later on.
Right, councillor Ricky Knight.
Yeah. Councillor Price alluded to the Academy Trust and their obligations. I wondered if the building's still there, all boarded up, still in existence. I just wondered to what extent, can you enlighten me as to what those obligations might be? Just purely profit?
Well, they've got any buildings, have they? Theirs is a yellow open space at the end of the playing field.
Sorry, I've got.
The Academy Trust is free of any building, but you can't access it without.
But it was part of the.
Yes, part of it, yes.
Okay, I didn't understand that it was separate ownership.
Sorry, I can probably allude on that actually, because I've been there before on the yellow bit with the academy thing. It's actually, they've done things under the Prince's Trust, so they like gardens and different things they've done in the past.
Councillor Price, do you want to just repeat your alternative recommendation? I mean, I don't know how we have to vote on the initial recommendation.
That we don't go forward and advertise our piece of land, and that we approach the county council to look at the future of our parcels of land together, and that we also approach the trust, the Academy Trust, so that we can produce a longer term plan that produces benefit for the community.
Anybody
I'll second that.
As far as voting is concerned, can we just vote on that recommendation without going up to the initial one?
Chair, just a quick answer. I was just thinking that it might be worth Councillor Bell registering an interest in this, just because it being a county councillor, and this is because there's financial impact, I suppose, on the
Yes.
county council.
Thank you, legal officer. It is worth you sitting there throughout the meeting.
Thank you. And add to that recommendation that you're instructing officers to write to the county council along those terms, and that you're urging the North Devon County Council representatives to raise that issue with the county council direct.
Yes. Councillor Price is agreeable to that.
I said earlier on, get on the phone straight away.
Councillor Bell, you declared your interest now.
Very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Does that mean you can't vote?
Well, I suppose this isn't a direct impact, but there is a financial impact potentially on the county council. So it could be considered that your view is clouded by that. So I would suggest it is probably worth leaving something.
Seconded, all those in favour? Any Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Sarah Jane.
Oh, no, we got the work program.
Yeah.
That's business.
Well, just the pre-agenda. It's only to note, isn't it?
It's to know to add anything, if you need to add anything, Chair. Yeah, the idea is to start.
Sorry, when we discussed this last week, I suggested that we have the next July meeting just on Ilfracombe things, didn't it?
Yeah, so
I thought an officer would be presenting that.
yeah, sorry, Chair. So the work programme obviously has gone, obviously we are looking for the work programme. So strategy and resources didn't have one. So previously you had a formal plan when it was adopted. So this sets out the future reports that are planned to come to this committee, but also gives you opportunity to then discuss and add any further themes that you might want to add on. And similarly, as you said at the group leaders meeting, we discussed about having one of the future SNR meetings in Ilfracombe. Particularly Anna is planning that for the July meeting. So as you can see on the work programme on the July meeting, you've got an Ilfracombe follow-up. At the group leaders meeting, Chair, you indicated you'd like a report coming to this committee prior to that. So on the June meeting, you have an Ilfracombe update meeting, an Ilfracombe update item, which is just providing members an update on all the valuable work that's going on in Ilfracombe, all the projects that we're working on, all the stakeholder meetings that we're part of, so that members get a full understanding of everything that's going on within the Ilfracombe area. At the moment, that's planned to come to this meeting here on the 2nd of June, with a view then it would go to an Ilfracombe meeting on the follow-up on the 7th of July. Or you can have that main report coming to your July meeting in Ilfracombe when you hold it in Ilfracombe, where members of Ilfracombe community may want to come along and listen to the good work that's going on in that area.
Yeah. Councillor Wilkinson.
Well, I'm delighted we're going to Ilfracombe, to be honest, because I think it really does need to be highlighted at the moment. One of the things I really would like to see looked at is the stalled sites in Ilfracombe. And we've pre-warned the relevant officers, I don't know, but there are a number of, top of my head, 5 at least sites that have been derelict and burnt out for the last 15, 20 years almost. Probably is 20 years, I would think now. And nothing's happening. Just let us know what is happening.
They're reported on every Ilfracombe Regeneration Board meeting, and there's lots going on.
Yeah.
So at least we've got a chance to have a proper report to go through each one of them. So
Yeah, I sit on that as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Press, I do understand that. But it needs to be happening in this committee as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also not just Ilfracombe, I think because it's you have something on the agenda for the whole North Devon. I mean, I don't want to bring up the basketball situation, because we could talk about it so much. Still we need clarification on a lot of those individualistic ones. Just what the current situation is and what on earth we can possibly do. So, and that leads into the whole delves into some Councillor Bowser's portfolio on this. Just the regeneration, the visual looks of the places, the graffiti coming into the what we call the entrance ways, perhaps to the gateways to Barstow. What we can do about that if anything. I think trying to look at the visual impact of what, if you imagine that we were a visitor coming in North Devon the first time, what do you see? You see the art society in Shackleford, you see graffiti. You don't see all the good things. You get rid of some of the bad things. Be helpful. So I think the report, what we can call that.
Here's just what you want to report on now. It was stopped sites just now, and now it's the whole place.
Well, I think Ilfracombe definitely, but I think it could do with something later on in August or September.
Yeah, I was going to say, in the autumn, we could have a update to us now about the whole regeneration package of Barnsley as well. I think that would be really useful because well, as you know, on Friday, Dave, we went through lots of that with our colleagues in the town, some of the interventions that were going on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm conscious that we do that. We
We
just
that's the positive side. Look at Derby Ace Factory. Look over at Seven Brethren, what's happening, you know, and Backwood Street. I mean, people are amazed at the difference we're making. So there's lots of good as well. So I'd like to have it in a report wrapped up as a whole.
Yeah. Any other ideas?
Yes, I know, next policy development is going to be talking about the implications of the LGA little review of governance and policy development. Would that come back to this committee, or would that go to full council? I'm not quite sure.
It depends what recommendations are coming through from policy development committee. Some of those may impinge on strategy resources. Some may go direct to full council. So we just need to see what the discussion is first.
It might be worth identifying something maybe for August. Just a space for that. It needs to come here.
Just going to the June policy.
It is, but July is quite full already for strategy and resources.
Chair, just as Ken said, if there's constitutional changes that come about from that, depending on what you want policy development to look at in the future and how you structure that, maybe obviously we need to come back to full council. So there may be things that go to full council, there may be things that get reported back to SNR. So once that debate's happened, this work programme will come to all your future SNR meetings. So the June meeting, you'll get the same work programme. So you've got opportunity to set that and change as you go along, and it's an evolving document.
Is that what's normally happened? Is that right?
Yeah, so other committees such as governance, policy development, the work programme is a standing item. So it sets out your future meetings, what's currently planned, so you can chop and change and bring new things to it as you evolve. Just on the Ilfracombe update then, Chair, can we just be clear in terms of which meeting you want that main report to come to? Do you want it to go to the Ilfracombe meeting in Ilfracombe in July? Did you want it to come to this meeting earlier than that? So there's a little bit of confusion when we spoke about it.
So what we're going to do is concentrate the next S&R on Ilfracombe things, so it'll be useful to have it then. But then when we go to the S&R in Ilfracombe, we give chance to members beforehand to see some of the things that have been going on. I think that's what we discussed. I don't know what do councillors think. I mean, do officers have enough time to put something together for June S&R?
So it sounds like we're doing it twice.
No, I don't think we do. No, I think we're getting mixed up because the actual S&R meeting in July will be in Ilfracombe. And I suggested, well, it would be good if we could discuss a lot of the things about Ilfracombe at the next S&R, so that when we go to Ilfracombe, if members wanted to see some of the things that have happened, there might be a chance to actually see some of those things before S&R committee. That was all. That's why the mix-up is coming.
Playing devil's advocate, Chair. If I was a member of the public from Ilfracombe, you want to discuss it, I would probably want to discuss or take part in that discussion.
Yeah, let's do the Ilfracombe report in July. Yeah. And we can try and encourage the town council to come along and ask questions as well. And
yeah, and I'm sure they will. And I think the idea about members seeing some of the projects as well is a good one. And they can see those projects before they have the discussion about them, perhaps.
Yeah.
And also in Coombe, it's not all bad. There are people doing development in Ilfracombe that are doing it really, really well. And I think it's good for members to see that as well when we go there. Yeah.
I think we could probably have one of the things as well to see whether they can come along and present, because some of the stuff they're doing about community-based projects is really good.
Yeah.
It's not development or anything that you can point the finger to, but it's some of the work strengthening the community, and I think that would be good to hear from them as well.
A quick comment. I hope it's not impertinent, but having knocked on 10,000 doors in Ilfracombe, these 10,000 steps, was it? That was yours post.
It's only 2 doubles.
Anyway, and one of the reasons I suspect for the rise of the far right in Ilfracombe and elsewhere in Devon, the amount of hostility aimed at Barnstable by Ilfracombe residents was, I was quite astonished, to be honest. I didn't say much, I must admit, but this is one way of addressing it, because it gives them a chance to vent their spleen, and I suspect they would be doing just that in July.
And perhaps we could have the district members from Ilfracombe there, that'd be good.
Again, sorry, Councillor.
That could be good if we could have the district council members from Ilfracombe there.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure she will be.
Chair, I totally agree with Councillor Prowse's points that it needs a balanced programme there, because there are some great things going on in Coombe. I think some really strong work with the culture in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's good. Yeah, we've got to, the whole point of this is to try and point out just what we are doing in Ilfracombe and the good things that are coming out of it. Councillor Bell.
Yeah, just really slightly, but yeah, my nursing colleagues that live in Ilfracombe, they don't often recognise the negative part. There's a lot of positivity there. People love living there. There are some problems. But my action point was we were discussing the other storage projects around the area. Obviously, we got the Ilfracombe storage projects, but we do have the storage projects in Barnstable, some in Braunton as well. Would be nice to know, are we going to get that report at the same time, or will that come through a different SNR meeting?
The autumn ones.
Yeah, I mean, this is for members to debate, and this is your work programme. But the suggestion earlier on in the conversation was that if the focus is on the Ilfracombe in July, then in the autumn the focus should perhaps be on Barnstable and other areas.
Interesting. So North Devon Homes, and again, as the Lord Betts Commission report points out, North Devon does have a lot of social housing that is suddenly disappears from the social housing register, and it is in some of that, especially in Braunton, is in a stalled state at the moment. So yeah, something to come back and discuss. It's focusing on Ilfracombe in July, but yeah, to come back on those projects as well as the.
Will you be Bratton Plumbing in November?
On a practical point of view, at the July meeting, have we done this before in Ilfracombe? And where is it likely to be?
The previous executive meeting was 10 years ago, Landmark Theatre in the big room.
Is that if you go in, that's still a possibility?
I just think it's what I was looking at.
Update on that. Previously, they were able to offer it to us free of charge, but they now have a cost. And I've been quoted £350 plus that.
Oh, we part owned it.
So we're going to look tomorrow at the possibility of holding it in the Ilfracombe Centre in the council chamber.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Lambton Centre is the actual school centre.
Yeah.
There's the Lantern Centre, I would
And
imagine.
Lambton Centre.
If you want to be in the town centre so you can walk around some of these sites, don't you?
Yeah.
So the Ilfracombe Centre makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I believe they've got, because we might still have to offer it hybrid as well. And I believe they've got technology there, so I'm going to investigate that tomorrow. Remind them.
Okay, any other comments?
That would be hybrid.
Okay, we'll end the meeting there. Thank you very much.